In this video, you're going to learn about 6 best practices for building an MCP server. We're going to go over all of these points as well as the code examples so that you can take all of that knowledge and go apply it on your personal project or at your work. Now, the tricky part with MCP servers is that a lot of developers are treating them just like API endpoints, but designing those are two completely different things. And if you don't want to fall into this trap, then this is the video for you. If you're ready, let's get started. By the way, this video is based on Phil Schmidt's article. Go check out his blog. He has tons of interesting blog posts, so you're not going to regret it. And this video is also sponsored by Klutch, but more on that later. So the first best practice is focusing on the intent instead of the operation itself. So let's imagine we are a delivery company and we want to let the users track the delivery status of a particular order. What we're gonna do in this case, instead of an API design, is we're gonna get the user by the email, then we're gonna get the last order of this user, and then we can also fetch the tracking of that order. Of course, you're gonna expose all of these endpoints separately in an API design, but for the MCP server, the only thing you should be actually focusing on is simply track order. And behind the scenes, it's gonna look something like this. So we have an MCP tool, which is basically a function. And this function has some description here so that the agent can actually read that into its context and understand what this function is responsible for. But the cool part is actually here. So instead of exposing all of these methods as an MCP tool to our MCP client, we simply do all of that work in the background. So the only thing that we expose to the MCP client from our MCP server is just this e-commerce track order method, or rather a function. And as soon as we get all of that data, this is the only thing that we return to the MCP client so that the agent can consume all of that. So the second best practice is focusing on flattening the arguments of an MCP tool. So for example, we have a method that accepts a dictionary, and this dictionary contains the following keys. Now, if we let the agent use this dictionary, it might accidentally forget some of these keys, and eventually the agent or the LLM behind it is going to hallucinate. Instead, we can make the life of an agent easy by simply giving specific keys or specific arguments. So the example of this best practice would be the following. As you can see, all of these parameters are flattened, meaning they are not within a dictionary. So if you want to make the life of your agent difficult, wrap them in a dictionary so that your agent is having to understand what the dictionary is consisting from, and this might lead to complications and hallucinations. That's why declaring all of your arguments like this is going to make your MCP cleaner. On a side note, guys, what if your software could control your spending automatically? Imagine creating carts on demand, setting hard limits, locking them to a single merchant, and letting rules shut things off automatically all in one place. That's exactly what Klutch enables. For developers though, it can go a step further. Klutch exposes all of this through a programmable card API, so systems and agents can create, manage, and control cards automatically. Now picture this, a new SaaS trial starts, a virtual card is created, locked to that merchant with a fixed budget. If the trial ends, if the price changes, or if the limit is hit, the card simply stops working. What ties this all together is how modular it is. Cards, rules, subscriptions, categorization, you use what you need, whether you're managing personal spending or building automated workflows. From the dev side, the experience is solid. Clear API docs, Postman collections, code samples, and even a mini app ecosystem where you can build small financial tools for yourself or share them with other Klutch users. Klutch is currently US only, but whether you're a consumer who wants tighter control or a developer who wants to build systems that touch money, this might be a good solution for you. So go check it out and let me know in the comments if you like it. And with that said, let's continue. The next best practice is that instructions are also context. So when the user talks to an LLM has to decide which tool it wants to use at this particular time. And it doesn't only see the method names here or the tool names, but it obviously also sees the description of a specific tool, meaning it also sees all of these little hints, the description of the arguments. Not only that, but it also sees all of that code that's within the tool. It can read all of that code. It can understand what kind of errors are going to be returned in which cases, you can tell it which examples are correct and what it has to do next. Not only that, if the operation was actually successful, you can still provide some extra information so that the agent knows how to proceed even in case of a success. Always make sure to curate your MCP server ruthlessly. What do we mean by that? Don't have more than 10 tools per server. Otherwise, your LLM or the LLM that the user is talking to is going to have a bloated context, and 10 tools is already a good number. You have one MCP server that does one job, and it's not supposed to tackle multiple products at the same time, even if your company is having multiple products. Also, you want to make sure that you keep the clean state of your MCP server. So if some of the tools are unused, or if you see that the usage statistics of a particular tool are low, just delete it. And also, you might want to consider splitting your tools by persona. For example, some of the tools are used by users and other tools are used by admins. Also, naming tools is very important. If you're looking at this tool, you won't notice anything special within this part of the code, but the important part is actually lying in the title of this tool. As you can see, it's called linear create issue. Why is it called linear create issue? Because if we do delete that, create issue is way too generic. So your Jira tool or Jira MCP server might have something called create issue, and your GitHub MCP server can also have the same name. So your LLM that's running locally is going to get confused. That's why it's good to prefix your tool methods with your server name. And by the way, most of the clients are doing that, but in case if you know that some of the clients don't do that, make sure to include that yourself. And last but not least, developers forget that MCP servers also do need pagination. MCP tools are gonna make some get calls under the hood. So for example, fetch the GitHub issues. And if you're able to supply all of these arguments to your MCP tool, then this is already good. And of course, don't forget to return some of the info back to the agent, for example, showing the number out of the total count, and to say that use the following offset to see the next page. These are the important parts. I hope you guys liked the video, learned something new. If you did, smash like and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.